Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen, Alyx King, and Kelly Pretty here. It's Tuesday, September the 5th. February the 5th. Boy, am I off. September. Yeah, I'll tell you a story about that in a moment, but it's actually February the 5th, 2019. It's currently 4 p.m. in New York, 1 p.m. in Los Angeles, 9 p.m. in London. Sydney, Australia is around 8 a.m. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for tuning in to another episode of LOA Today. And ladies, I'll tell you what the story is, why I was thinking September. Steve Rowell and I did the program this morning. And after the program, we're having a chat. Toward the end of the show, I had mentioned how I'd been doing the podcast for about 6.5 years. And during our after chat, and you know, we have these very often after a podcast, he and I were talking, and he said, you know, you mentioned how long you had been doing the podcast? I said it was about 6.5 years. And he said, what was the date? I said, what do you mean? The date that you started. I said, oh, that's easy. It was my wedding anniversary. Louise and I started on our 13th anniversary, which was September 26, 2012. And he had this look on his face, and he said, hang on just a second, because I think that's the same day I sent the letter in. I said, what letter? He says, hang on. And he digs through his records, and he says, it is. That was the day he sent in a letter to the Church of England demanding that they investigate the fact that he and others had been sexually molested when he was a child.
Wow.
And then here he is 6.5 years later on our podcast that I had started on the same date.
Wow.
I mean, how's that for a major synchronicity?
That's
so that's why I had September on my mind. It's because, I mean, the two of us...
Talk about numerology.
It was crazy. We were looking at each other on the screen, and we're staring, and we're laughing, and we're making jokes, and then we keep coming back to it, and both of us saying, we can't believe it. How is that possible?
Wow.
That was
Everything happens for a reason, man.
Holy cow. Unbelievable. So, I mean, I have, in the last few years, learned how to be a believer in synchronicity. For a long time, I wasn't.
Yeah.
And Steve was actually telling me he was also very much of the analyst like I was for so long. That's the first really, really big one I've ever had. I mean, I've had some pretty cool ones, but that one just knocked my socks off. And I think it knocked his off, too. I mean, we were just flabbergasted. We were just blown away by it.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? Oh, just remarkable. So that's how my morning was. How's your day been?
Kelly, how's your day going?
Yeah, good. I guess the highlight of my day was having to take my puppy to get her first haircut. So not really business related today, but that was my highlight anyway.
That's fantastic.
Adorable.
She looks really cute.
We're doing feel good
after the cut.
We're doing feel good today. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, she's here with me just now because I've been allowed to use the living room today.
Aww.
I was going to say we're in a different location today.
Yeah, exactly. So
you're bouncing around the place. That's okay. We can live with that. It gives us a different background. I always show everybody the same background. I got to do something to mix that up.
I know. I've been staring at your skis for months.
They aren't even my skis. They're Louise's. That's the worst part. I mean, you're thinking they're mine, and they're not mine at all.
I was just a bit like, well, I don't know when he's going skiing. But...
Well, not today, because today we got temperatures in the mid-60s, so I don't think there's going to be a lot of skiing going on today.
It's very nice out.
Unbelievable. I mean, I actually got to go walking in my shirt sleeve today. I was like, oh, this is great. I love this. So, yeah.
Well, I went to get the mail, and that was about it for me.
That's all right. Hey, for you, getting out is good. Anything that you do is a good thing.
I took a breath of fresh air. That's all that matters.
That's good. You got yourself out. Because we know that's a big thing for you. So, good. Good for you. You got out. That's really good. So, let's see. Do we have any questions coming on? Oh, how nice. Jeremy says, if anyone needs prayers, I'm praying for you all. That's really nice. Thank you, Jeremy.
Aww.
This is all feel good today. This is feel good day. That's what it is. So
I like it.
Well, I don't see any questions, so I would say, why don't we see what we can generate amongst ourselves for conversation. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes this afternoon, because with this morning's podcast, you got your woo-woo going there. With this morning's podcast.
This is my Mr. Burns fingers.
Okay. A Simpsons analogy there. Yes. We're going to have, it's going to be interesting to see what we come up with, because Steve and I did the same thing this morning, and we went off in directions that, some of them were directions I'd never been in before. So I guess the bar's been set kind of high. Let's see what we can come up with for this show.
Really?
Yeah. It was pretty wild what we were coming up today. I mean, Steve kind of surprised me. One of the first questions he asked me was, what do I think about the idea of universal energy? You know, do I buy into it? Do I believe it? I have a similar
question.
You do? Okay, well
I
then let's revert to today right now. What is the question, Alyx?
Okay, what do we feel happens in the afterlife, if there is one?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's an energy-related thing. I can tell you a story. It's a story I've told before on the podcast, but I don't remember if I've told you.
I think I know which story, but go ahead.
Okay.
For the new listeners.
For the new listeners, yeah. 10 years ago, 11 years ago, next month in March, my father passed away. And when he passed away, a few days later, my sister was in church with my mother. And at the point they were listening to the sermon, all of a sudden my sister started getting this really, really bad headache. And my sister has some psychic ability. She's not like a full-fledged psychic who goes out and gives readings and that kind of thing, but she has some psychic ability. And she'd been working on them. She'd been taking classes, learning how to tap in and understand what she was getting and all that kind of thing. So anyway, she starts getting this headache, and it was like a migraine headache, really, really painful. And she had a class recently in which she'd been informed that when you get that, look to find out, kind of put out there, is this some sort of a psychic connection you're getting? Because that can actually manifest as a migraine sometimes. So that was the first thing she thought of. And of course, the second thing she thought of was our father. And she said, "Dad, is that you?" And got back a yes. And she was pretty excited about that. So my sister, being my sister, the very first question she asked my dad, now that she's made connection to him in the non-physical, is, "What's it like on the other side?"
Which should be everybody's question.
I guess so, yeah. I don't know. My question is, really, is that you? But apparently her question was, what's it like on the other side? And the answer she got back was festive. And when she shared that story with the rest of us in the family, that word, festive, is what convinced me that it was a real experience. Because, and Alyx, you and I have talked about this concept before, it's what I call a dad word. It's a word that only my dad would use. My sister, if she was trying to describe something that was festive, she would describe it as amazing, fantastic, incredible. She would never use festive. That was not her style, but it was definitely my dad's style. So that's why I knew it was from my dad. So there's the first answer I have. It apparently is festive on the other side, which is actually not a bad thing.
Okay.
I mean, that sounds pretty, that's high vibration stuff. And from what Abraham tells us, it's high vibration on the other side. So that kind of adds up. So there's my answer. What do you think, Kelly?
Yeah, I've actually got a similar story. My dad died 10 years ago on New Year's Eve, just gone. And, and I was a complete atheist, and I really thought that, like, when you die, you just, like, rot in the ground and that's it. And then, for about 5 years, I was, like, unwilling to look at any photos. I didn't want to deal with the fact that he died. And then when I got to about 26, I started to go through, like, the whole grieving and healing process. And my ex-boyfriend introduced me to this guy, and he said, this was the same ex that introduced me to The Secret and life coaching. So, everything happens for a reason. And he introduced me to all of that. And I'm really grateful. And he introduced me to this guy, and he said, like, this guy can communicate with people that have passed on, and he's really psychic, and he wants to do a reading with you. And I was like, okay, cool. So I sat down in this room, and this guy literally sat in front of me, and I saw him, like, almost not physically morph into my dad, but he had all of the mannerisms of my dad. Like, when my dad would say to me, "I'm so proud of you," his bottom lip would always wobble. And this man said that exact thing, and his bottom lip was wobbling.
Oh my goodness.
It was, like, so emotional. And then, like, he said all this stuff that no one would ever have known. He said, "My dad, your dad says he's so sorry," and all of this stuff that no one would have ever known. Like, my ex didn't know about it. And then when we went downstairs, because we stayed the night at his house, and we went downstairs and spent the evening with him, he turned around to me and he said, "Your dad's standing right now up singing Mac the Knife and all these songs that were like the songs that my dad would sing all the time. And then he said now he's sat down on the sofa and he's rolling his ankle around and around over the sofa arm. And I forgot my dad used to do that because it was so long since I'd lived with my dad. I forgot that was like a thing that he did. And I was like, it's just too much. Like, this man knows far too much. He was reminding me stuff about my childhood that I'd forgotten. And
wow.
From that day onwards, I was like, right, I'm determined. I'm going to meditate every day so that I can eventually communicate with my dad. And I got to the point where I could. And
wow.
and I was going through a really tough time. I was crying one day and I like felt his energy come in and he gave me a cuddle. And then I started writing down everything I thought he was saying to me. And I wrote it all down and I had a call with a coach. She's an intuitive coach, like 10 minutes later. And she came on the phone and she's like, Kelly, before you start speaking, I'm going to tell you the exact conversation you've just had with your dad so that you believe that it's real. Wow. And she read the whole notepad out word for word as to what I'd written down. Yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
I really believe that.
So are you still an atheist?
Yeah. No.
Converted to the other one.
Yeah. So it's just like, I totally believe that there is, another realm, shall we say.
So what do you think it's like on the other side?
Well, see, here's my thing. I've had conversations, not me personally, but, via a medium with my grandfather, who I never met on this side. And so we've talked about it, but I also believe in reincarnation. So I feel like you can choose once you're there if you want to come back, or if you want to stay in your jovial place of seeing a celestial being. So that's what I think. Okay.
But what's it like on the other side?
What's it like? It's going to be a huge party.
So you agree with festive, you just use a different word, but it's the same concept.
Well, yeah. But I mean, like, rock concerts all the time, or, all your ailments are gone and you're whatever age you felt the best at. And that's what I think is happening over there.
Okay. You agree with that, Kelly?
I feel like when you meditate, transcendental meditation, for instance, you can have the feeling of a very small, light feeling of what it actually feels like to be on the other side, because you can leave your body physically. You can feel this absolute state of bliss, love, unconditional peace, and serenity and oneness and connectedness with everyone else. So I think that we're all one. I think we're all connected. And I think that when we go over to the other side, I believe that, I do agree with you, Alyx, that we reincarnate. But, I believe there's a lot of angels here in human form right now as well.
I have a question for both of you, or for either one of you. Oh, yeah. Well, it's what you think. So, yeah, it does answer the question. But I have a question for both of you, or either of you, to answer, because I can't really make up my mind one way or the other. I know that there are plenty of recorded psychic readings where people made connections and they had phenomenal experiences, and like yours, Kelly, which was really one of the better ones I've heard, about how everything in detail came out exactly the way it would have been if your father had been talking to you, and then your coach tells you the exact same thing, all this kind of reinforcement. So clearly in all of these, the personality of the person is retained and is very, very strong. I've also heard that from some people that we actually leave our personalities behind, but the energy is able to recall what that personality is and basically re-enervate it, so to speak. So my question is, which way do you think it is? Do you think they actually retain their personality, or they just kind of leave it behind and go on to the next one?
That's an interesting question.
And I don't know the
really
answer.
Interesting.
I have no idea how to even begin to answer it. So that's why I was hoping maybe you guys had some idea. Because I don't have a clue.
I do think that we keep our personalities when we're when we're communicating with people that are in human form now, like people that are on Earth. I believe that we can connect in with that. I don't know if we have that when we're in another realm, that personality, or if we just can connect back in with it when we're speaking to like a loved one or whatever. But I do think that everything that we learn, I think we go through a phase of like transitioning where we look back on our life and we look back at all the things that we've learned, all of the lessons, and then we kind of move into another realm. And then if we reincarnate back into a different body, but our soul's still out there, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I do think that like you can be in the physical in the other realm and still be on Earth reincarnated, if that makes sense, at the same time.
Well, there are a couple ways I can make sense out of that. One way I can make sense out of it is virtually everybody I've ever heard talk on the subject speaks about how we have an inner side to ourselves. I call it my inner Walt. Some people call it a higher power. But there's another part of us. Abraham has actually said very specifically that the physical part of us is the much smaller piece. The non-physical part of us is the much bigger piece. So it's certainly conceivable to me that other side of me isn't limited to just being here through me, who I am right now. I can conceive of the idea that part of me could also be connected to another me somewhere. From my perspective, it sounds confusing, but who knows? From that perspective, maybe it's easy to do. Maybe it's no more difficult than looking at multiple screens like I'm doing here. You know, it could be just that simple. The other thought that I have about it is there are theories about infinite numbers of universes, infinite numbers of experiences. All the experiences haven't been played out. Neville Goddard talks about it in terms of all creation is done. All possibilities have already been created. We're just experiencing them all, which I don't completely buy into, but at least it's an interesting idea because the focal point of it is that not only are all possibilities, like right now I'm telling this story this particular way, and there are like 50 other possibilities or a million other possibilities of how I'm telling this particular story, and each one starts creating its own little path and so forth. And they're all happening simultaneously.
Right.
Okay? So if in that sense, I can kind of conceive also, you have us here in the physical realm, then you have another part of us, so to speak, that is reincarnated in another part of the planet, and a third part of us that is looking from up here, and there's a fourth. I mean, they're just kind of all over the place. But it also gets to the point where my little brain can't handle all that, so I kind of give up after.
Right. That's something we figure out when we get to the other side.
I'm curious to know that. I hope so. That'd be interesting. Now, Jeffrey has a question. He's asking, first of all, he's thanking us for having this particular conversation. And then he says, is the way we view the other side decided by what tribe or culture we belong to?
Obviously.
Why obviously?
That's the question.
Because because it starts with, it's nurture. It's how you were raised. And so, but you believe what you believe based on how you were raised. So that's how your world was shaped. Now, as you get older and start to research and do other things and open your mind a little bit, you can kind of branch out, but I think it definitely starts off like, in your home church, whatever that is, whatever that may be. Mm-hmm.
So basically, when you become one of those troubling teenagers that starts challenging the parents everywhere, that's where you're starting to build your own path.
I'm going to say yes. Because that's when I was like, okay, I'm practicing Wicca now because I'm 13 and I'm wearing all black and that's what I do. This is me now. Okay. I eventually grew out of that, but that was me at 13.
All right. Fair enough. What do you think, Wicca? Yeah, right. Boy, my brain, first time this, the February, September thing, now this. But no, Kelly, what do you think? I mean, you agree with what Alyx is saying about, what it's like in different tribes, different cultures? Is that experience in that tribe or culture what paints our perception?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think that much like what Alyx said, when you're growing up, like you're really heavily influenced by your parents' beliefs and then beliefs of people around you. So I think that more recently, though, the people are having spiritual awakenings, and maybe there's a shift towards it not necessarily being specific religions. It's more like getting to a place of oneness, a place of us all being connected, and it doesn't actually matter what religion you are, because religion can separate us. So yeah, I think that there is a shift happening where people are kind of waking up to the fact that it doesn't matter what religion you are. Like we all believe that there's something else that's bigger than us going on. We can all kind of connect on that level, hopefully.
I find it interesting that you're saying that, because I wasn't really confident enough to voice that myself, but that's the feeling I'm getting too. I mean, we all know, all you have to do is look at the news. You can see there's all this religious strife still going on.
Marianne Williamson's up for,
I saw that, yeah.
President.
So,
I mean, that's
I don't watch the news, so I don't know what that means.
I don't either, but this is because I follow her on Instagram. Marianne Williamson, do you know her? She's like a massive spiritual guru. She's basically Oprah's spiritual mentor. And she's up as like trying to be president of the United States in 2020.
Stop it.
Serious.
Yeah.
That'd be insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. And her message is that the world and the United States need a moral and spiritual awakening.
Yeah, but Williamson is, in some ways, she's like the modern queen, the one of the first people who came into the modern version of the self-help book genre. And there was self-help books before her, for sure. There were a lot of them, but she kind of launched the modern version, where it's just like this explosion of self-help people, and she was at the forefront of that. Yeah,
she was.
Cool.
Yeah, was she not? She was one of the first people that taught oh my goodness, mind blank. There's like this huge spiritual book that everybody reads. Book of Miracles, something to do with
A Course in Miracles?
Oh, God. Course in Miracles, that's it, yeah. She was one of the first teachers to teach that in the kind of modern day, I think.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Okay.
That would fit her, yeah. I never really studied her stuff, but I remember from a very young age going to the bookstore and seeing her books up there. So, I mean, she's been published forever.
Wow.
Yeah, she's been doing it for a long time. So, yeah, I get the impression...
That would be interesting.
Despite all the news, despite all the conflicts that are continuing going on, all the religious hardliners and so forth, I'm just getting the impression that all these hardliners is driving their own people away. And more people are, questioning, is it really worth it to be this hardcore adherent to this belief system that I was brought up in? And they aren't necessarily leaving or whatever. They're simply modifying their understanding, and I think that modification is leading toward more tolerance and a less rigid orthodoxy and more of a just sort of a generally agreed upon spiritualism, which is cool. I mean, I hope that's actually what's happening, but that's the sense that I'm getting, and it's probably not going to get covered in the news for a while, so don't look for the headlines.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But
Yeah.
But these things happen in their own time. So, okay. Well, let's see. Where can we go from there? I don't see... Are there any other questions? No, I'm not seeing questions. I'm seeing lots of comments. People loving it. Yeah. Oh, here's a question. Jeffrey's asking, why do you think the conversation ties into our bigger topic of the law of attraction? Which is a good question. And I can give you what my answer is right away and why I even went this way. To me, the law of attraction affects every single aspect of our lives. And Steve and I were kind of talking about this morning. We tend, as human beings, to think about law of attraction like it's a magic trick, right? So I just attracted this thing into my life and it just came out of nowhere. And that's the cool part. That's the secret, right? You're attracting all these things into your life that just came out of nowhere. But in reality, everything that came into our life, we attracted. Which I think is actually a harder concept. And I think it's a concept that you have to kind of work at after a while. So I'm reaching over for this pen and I manifested it. But my analytical mind says, no, you just reached over and picked up a pen. how could you possibly have manifested that? That's the hard part to kind of get the grasp on. But once you understand that really everything in our lives we manifested, it's not that big of a leap to say that, well, then everything that we talk about is law of attraction related. So for me, talking about this stuff, it's perfect for law of attraction.
Yes.
That's my answer. So is that yours, Alyx?
Yes, I was going to say the same thing, that law of attraction is everything. So anything applies. So no matter what you're talking about, it somehow ties in. Okay.
You agree with that too, Kelly?
Yeah, I guess. Like for me, my journey was The Secret, the law of attraction, and then that opened up a question in my mind. Like, how does this thing work? Right. Like, what else is going on here? Because you can't just like start manifesting stuff into your life and seeing synchronicities happen. And like no human being, I think, would turn around and go, oh, well, that's just that. And that's the way that life is. Like,
well, actually, I do know one, believe it or not, but I understand your point.
Oh, do you?
Yes. He was one of my co-hosts early on. His answer was always, you're making it too complex. This is all very simple. Just keep it simple.
Yeah. And I get that, but I feel like when people want to like, you know, just use the law of attraction and then they don't want to go any further than that, like it's usually fear that stops them. So it's usually like a fear of actually, I don't want to know more. I that's enough for me. Like there's a fear there of what's on the other side, you know? And my brother is like that. Like my brother lives in LA. He's not that spiritual. I am. And he's starting to like open the door up. And somebody turned around to him in LA and said, oh, you should go to Bali. But tell you what, if you like who you are, don't go to Bali. And it's like this. You know, it's really made him think, actually, is this a road I want to go down? Because as soon as you open that door, you can't go back. So for me, it was like the questions of, well, how does this work? It was too much like, it was too enticing to try and understand the specifics of how, like, what else is going on here. So I think that's the link for me, is that, you know, the law of attraction isn't just some like, you know, random miracle and then we all rot in the ground when we die. Do you know what I mean? Like there's got to be something else happening or else it wouldn't be physically possible. I think, but that's just my own opinion. It doesn't mean it's right.
I agree with you. I mean, there was a time when my own beliefs were very atheistic / agnostic because I couldn't even decide whether I doubted or didn't believe at all. But whichever it was, I kept playing with that idea that you just described, Kelly, you know, that life just kind of ends. I think Anthony Hopkins said it really well when he played the character of the guy from Australia, Burt Munro, who had this dream. He had an old 1920 Indian Scout motorcycle, and he had souped it up over the years into a speed cycle far beyond its original design capability. And there was a movie done about him, about how he fulfilled his dream of traveling with his motorcycle to the United States to go to the Bonneville Salt Flats out in Utah, where they do the speed racing to see, you know, how fast can they make vehicles go, and ended up setting a record with his machine for that time period. And one of the records actually stands to this day. But I love the thing that he said about this. He says, I think when you're dead, you're dead. And I thought that pretty much summarized where I was. At that time, you know, all those years ago, that's where I was. In fact, I've told this story before too. I had a conversation with my sister a couple months ago. And my sister had tried to introduce me to not so much law of attraction, but a lot of the spiritual type stuff and psychic phenomena and astrology and all this. And I'd always kind of pushed it aside and rejected it and so forth. 20 years later, we're having this phone conversation. And I'm saying to her, you know, we're having this conversation on this one topic, but can you imagine having the same conversation with me 20 years ago? And she said, and her response was, if we'd had this conversation 20 years ago, it would have fallen out of my chair. So, you know, I'm kind of like an exemplification of the transition that's happening. 20 years ago, I was not in the camp. Now I'm in the camp, and that's happening with a lot of different people. And it's a pretty cool thing, I think. So, let's see. Do we have any other questions over here?
I bet Jeffrey's got a question.
He says, I'm aware. We're just curious about why this topic was on our minds. Jeffrey, I can't tell you the answer to that one.
Well, that would be my fault because I started it off.
Oh, yeah, you asked the question.
I take the blame.
The closest answer I can give is very often when we're doing these shows, I'm just going with whatever's coming to me, which I take as being messages from my inner Walt. So, you know, blame my inner Walt. That's where it's coming from. And Alex's inner Alyx and Kelly's inner Kelly. And, you know, that's where this is all coming from. Because if you're asking for something, for a rational explanation, forget it. I can't give it to you.
We don't have one on this podcast. There's no such thing.
So, okay, who else has a question here for us to address? Let's see. What do we got? Trying to think if there's been anything that's been interesting on any of the Facebook conversations I've seen.
Oh, there was one, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember saying, I got to remember this for Tuesday. I should write things down. I should definitely get, like, some Postits or something.
Right, yeah.
Because I'm at that age where, like, my memory is not what it used to be.
What memory? No, I'm sorry.
Exactly. The one on your computer. No.
Yeah, that's it. I'm glad my computer has memory. That saves me a lot of the time. But, well, there was one that I saw earlier. There are a few of them. There were actually quite a few of them today that were on one theme now that I think about it. And the theme, let's see, well, there were a lot of differences between them, but there was a common theme. The common theme was, this is the way I'm saying it, not at all the way they said it. Why is it that all these bad things keep happening to me that I keep focusing on? No, so I've given the answer in the way that I...
You just answered your own question.
I just answered the way I said it, and that's not the way they were asking it. But that's what all these questions were coming out. They were all coming out as, I keep experiencing this, and I keep focusing on this stuff. Why do I keep experiencing this? And I'm thinking, are you in a law of attraction group? Have you been paying any attention at all?
Are you reading any of this?
I mean, I honestly think there are some people who just come into their group because they heard that it was some sort of great place for solving problems or something like that. So they figured, I'll see if the world can solve my problem for me. They've given no thought at all to what the topic is, to what the overall theme of the thing is.
Which is why we get so many of the same question over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I actually was thinking about, like I have lots of time in my schedule, but I was thinking about adding something to my schedule of trying to introduce a little fiction to the podcasts. And this is just a very nascent idea. I sent out emails to you guys to tell you about this, but that was like the very, very earliest stage of thinking about it. But the thing that made me think about it is all the posts that you see by, and we've talked about this before, Alyx, usually young women whose hearts have been broken and they want to get their ex back. And I'm thinking, that's the basis for a fictional podcast, for like a podcast serial, So you create a character. You know where I'm going.
This is fan-freaking-tastic. Oh, I'm so about this right now. Like, the ideas.
I think I just struck a nerve.
Oh, my God. Okay, go.
Well, I can't really go much farther than that. I mean, I'm thinking like, so we invent a character, or we call her, I don't know, Cassie or something. And Cassie is... you have to kind of stereotype it because there are certain characteristics that a lot of people have who ask this question. So we'll make her codependent, and we'll make her very much a person who's trying to please her man and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And she always connects with the wrong guys. They're always guys who are taking advantage of her, and then they break her heart, and then she goes out and repeats the pattern over and over again. She doesn't understand what's going on, and she's constantly posting questions for help and please send me good vibrations and so forth. I mean, that's a serial that could go on for months.
Yes.
That could go on for a long time. And Kelly's looking at me like saying, why are you talking about my clientele?
I was thinking that.
So we'll make you one of the main script writers. But, I mean, seriously, this is something that I really honestly think that it could do very, very well. And I had previously thought about doing something like this a number of years ago, shortly after I had started doing the podcast, but I didn't have enough confidence in the idea. I kind of threw it aside. And then I heard just a couple days ago that there is a company that was founded in the last couple of years that has put together a whole bunch of these podcasts with these fictional stories that aren't nearly as good as the one we just tried to lay out here. And they've just had an offer from Spotify, or the report is they've just had an offer from Spotify to purchase them for $200 million. And I'm thinking, well, why aren't we jumping in on that? I mean, we could come up with some stories to tell.
Yeah, why are we on Spotify for free? What's going on?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Did we sign the wrong sheet? I
don't know.
Exactly.
There's something we're doing wrong here. I don't know what it is. But maybe we're doing the right thing. You know, we're exploring a new way to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as kind of, you know, stream of consciousness. I have no idea where to go with it in this conversation, but I thought I'd throw it out just to see what bounced back at me.
I like it because it could help so many people, not even women, just, you know, everybody is messaging, how do I get my ex back?
What was that, Kelly?
It's terrible.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea. Definitely.
You think so too? Okay. We're going to have to do some brainstorming on this one, though, and see if we can start piecing some characters together. And, you know, like, it's almost like you're writing a novel, but you're writing like a sideways novel where, you know, each chapter becomes a serial episode, that kind of thing.
Well, that would be fantastic, because everybody would tune in and be like, okay, what's happening to Cassie this week?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Does she get him back this week?
Yeah,
what's going on? How do we do this?
And the fun thing is, I always thought it'd be fun to do old-time radio. Have you ever heard any old-time radio shows?
I've seen...
I don't think so.
I think I've seen kind of like the idea of it on, what's that movie I can't stand? A Christmas Story?
I don't know that one.
Weren't they listening to a radio show?
I'm not sure what that story is, so I can't answer.
A Christmas Story? It's on like 24 hours a day on Christmas Day.
Which one is it? Describe the story. I don't recognize the title.
Oh, my Lanta.
that is the title, I think.
Yeah, it is.
I know. I understand it's the title. Tell me what's the plot? What's the plot? That's what I'm asking for.
It's the one with the little kid who licks the pole and gets his tongue stuck on the pole, and then there's the father with the leg lamp in the whole thing. I mean,
I'm sorry. I guess I've lived a sheltered life. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
You see, I'm an earlier generation.
I know enough about it to not like it, so. But I'm like the only person in the world who doesn't like it. Like it's like the Christmas movie. Like everybody loves it.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I don't like it because I don't know it. So.
Me too.
Wow, guys.
See, Alex, I'm like a few generations older than you, so for me, it's a Wonderful Life. It's the Christmas.
It's from
movie,
your era, though. That's what I'm saying. It's been on for years.
Who are the actors? I don't recognize it at all.
I don't remember anybody who's current. So I mean, these are all older actors. Like I can't even think. I'll have to Google it and email you.
Okay, I'm sure Louise knows. She knows every single Christmas movie in existence, so she probably knows.
Then ask her; she'll know. Yeah, because it's very popular.
Yeah, and she's recorded a bunch of them. I've seen a number of them now, and I was like, okay, I've seen them. That's good.
Have you seen Elf?
I haven't seen the whole thing, but I've seen pieces of it. Yeah.
Okay, because that's like the best Christmas movie.
You like that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yes.
I watch it every year.
Right? Every year.
Yeah.
Multiple times a year.
Now, why do you like Elf so much? I mean, we're really off in La La Land here, but why do you like Elf so much?
It's just
hysterical.
So innocent. Like he's just so simple, and he's like, wait, I'm a human? Okay, now I have to explore this human side of me, and there's so many different things that I need to learn and know, and it's magical. I don't know.
Okay.
It just brings me back to my childhood. It's just so nice.
And you like it too, Kelly.
Yeah, I love it. It's literally one of my favorite films, I think.
Is it really? Okay.
So funny.
Okay.
So funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
Okay, well, apparently I've lived a Christmas-deprived life, so I'm going to have to go check out
I don't know what you're doing during the holidays, but you need to get it together.
Well, that's me put in my place, so thank you very much. Let's see, what do we have going on here? So you're a millionaire? Oh, wait, but this is looking interesting.
Who's a millionaire?
I don't know. There's a conversation that's been going on here, and I'm not sure if I can follow up on the whole conversation.
I'm manifesting that person giving me money. So.
Oh, there is a question for us to talk about.
Okay.
The question is, this is when Jeffrey asked, how do you energetically call out for guidance, or do you?
I can help with this one.
Go for it.
Okay, go.
So yeah, I guess it depends on what it is he's wanting guidance on. Who was it? Jerry,
Jeffrey.
Did you say?
Jeffrey,
sorry. So yeah, I always ask for guidance all the time. So every morning I will wake up and I'll like meditate, and then afterwards I'll just literally write, "Dear universe, do you have any guidance for me in this moment?" And then when you're in that state in your mind after you've just meditated, then you just trust anything that comes through for you. But really like profound stuff can come through, like really good guidance. And I do that throughout my day, and I do it with lots of different things as well. So yeah, I do.
I've had conversations with a number of co-hosts who have that same kind of ability. So it's nice to know you're one more in that grouping. And I've never had that level of success. I mean, Wendy Dillard was working with me for quite some time trying to help me to develop it. And what she had me do was basically, and this is where I still am to an extent, just working on, how do I feel about whatever the question is and whatever answers I'm seeming to think about. Does it feel good or does it feel bad? If it feels good, trust it. If it feels bad, then wonder where it's coming from. That kind of thing. Just go with the emotion of it and just go based on that. And I've achieved some degree of being able to connect it intuitively. Now, Linda Armstrong continues to repeatedly tell me over and over again that I am very strongly connected energetically, and I just got to learn to trust it. So I'm working on that aspect of it. But in terms of the actual communication, the conversation where I can, where somebody can put out a request for information and get all this information back, whether through auto writing or whatever else, haven't got there yet. So I'm a little bit jealous of you, Kelly.
What do you think it is that's blocked you? Do you think it's like the logical mind? Because I find sometimes, it's particularly with males, it's the logical mind that blocks them.
It would have to be speculation because I really don't know why. I mean, that certainly makes a lot of sense to me that, the logical mind would be in the way. The closest I can come to any kind of an answer is I know there have been times I've gotten answers back, and later on I discovered through process of elimination that they weren't from my logical mind. So they must have been from the inner me. But I've always been very confused when I actually get the message, is that my logical mind or is that my inner me? And Wendy actually tried to convince me, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. If it's good, it's good. And, she's right about that. But I have trouble differentiating. So when you said, is it the logical mind? That's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, I mean, it's just about trusting what's coming through, because if you're in say, for instance, if you've just meditated, then you're going to be in the most connected state. So like anything that comes through in that moment is going to be divine wisdom. And it's just about not second guessing it and not questioning it, because the first thing that drops in for us is what our truth is. And then as human beings, our logical mind takes over, and then we start going down like massive long twists and turns and end up what was like advice about, sell your property ends up being like move to Australia.
Well, they're connected, sort of.
Yeah. So it's just about trusting yourself, Walt, I think.
Well, that's consistent with what my sister has told me, because she's repeatedly told me, just go with whatever the first thing that comes to you. And I have tried to follow that rule and had some success with it. But even there, that's where I start to get confused, because sometimes the first thing that comes to me when I live with it for a while and play it back, I realize, no, that was just actually logical mind. I wasn't actually getting something from the other side. And that's why I get confused. I can't differentiate. I don't know which it is. I would love to be able to. It's like, I wish there was like a label that says, okay, this is from the inner Walton, this is from the logical mind. It's like, oh, okay, well, I can sort that,
Yeah. Why don't you create an affirmation or a mantra around being connected and having like divine wisdom coming through it and see what happens? Because like often because I get into that place sometimes where I get confused as well. And then I have to like almost convince myself through any other means that we would with anything else in our life, through affirmations, through positive reinforcement. And then you see it shifting, like you almost like heal it yourself, if that makes sense.
When you say that you see it shifting, what does that mean?
So like, I'll be in a really like confused state and I'll be like, oh my God, is this real? Is this not real? Is this coming through? The stuff that's coming through, is it right? Is it not right? And then like, if I tell myself and I go, like, say I create an affirmation and I'm like, I'm grateful for my consistently connected state and all of the amazing guidance that I get through on a daily basis. As soon as I start connecting to that like mantra or that affirmation, whatever you want to call it, and just start saying it over and over in my head again, I feel like you can shift the energy by doing that, because you're using the law of attraction to move into this like new belief system of like, actually, yes, I believe that everything that's coming through is right for me. And then with that affirmation and with that law of attraction, you then attract what's coming through as being the right thing, and then therefore trusting it. Then you start to trust it because you're telling yourself you trust it. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying is the domino effect there. The part that I'm not clear about yet is you start doing the mantra because you're looking for clarification. How do you know you've gotten the clarification? In other words, what clues you in that, yes, this is inner being, or no, this is logical mind?
I think it's the sensations you feel in your body. So when you're in that state of confusion and you're like, is this real? Is this not real? The stuff that's going to come through won't be truth. It won't be like inner wisdom. It will be confused because you're confused and your body's confused. Whereas if you move into that state of like affirming that the stuff that's coming through is correct and it's truth, then you start to shift the energy behind it, so that it starts feeling better in your body. So you'll notice a shift in your body and the energy in your body. It will start to feel more peaceful, I think, and more, you'll know by the sensation and the emotion in the body, yeah, this feels good. This feels right for me. And it won't be so confused, but you've almost tricked yourself, just like you would with anything else, like manifesting a car. You've tricked yourself into manifesting a more connected state and a more connected vibration.
So at that point, are you looking at the question you asked before about, which thought was it? Was it a logical, or was it inner being thought, or are you putting the request out again and seeing what the answer is? I mean, which is it? How are you divining it?
How would I do it at that stage?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably do the exercise again once I've done all of that stuff. I'd maybe leave it some time, to be honest, like a couple of days. Like I would make sure I felt more connected, make sure I felt more like that was my truth, and that I'd embodied that belief that anything that comes through is really divinely guided. Because I get into spots and times where I go, oh, I'm not connected at the moment, or I'm not trusting the stuff that's coming in. And the more I tell myself that, the more it happens.
Of course,
and the more the stuff I get through is really disjointed. So yeah, I'd leave it like a couple of days to keep telling yourself that affirmation and then try the exercise again.
Okay, so basically abandon the old confused data and just generate new data.
Yeah, when you're in like a more like peaceful state, when it feels more aligned.
Right, okay.
For me, that's what I would do.
I mean, you can see I have a computer programming side of me, and so I think about it in terms of how you organize a database and what you do with that database, and that's the way I'm thinking about what you're talking about.
Yeah, my partner's from the same background as you, and he's exactly the same. Like the logical mind does kind of block him at times, but it's it's a story like anything else. It's a story. It's a belief pattern. It's it's about shifting that story and shifting those beliefs, and then you can create something new.
And that much I do know, because I do have some recall about how I developed that programming mind, how I built it over time. And it was built. I mean, I created it piece by piece over time because I needed to have an understanding of how computer programming worked. But in order to have that understanding, I had to create a structure. I had to build it. And that's what I did. I built a structure. So clearly that is not a structure that just came out of nowhere. I created that one, and I did it through my logical mind. So that gives me at least some clue to work with.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking to see if we have... Boy, lots of people are really excited about all the stuff that's going on both in our conversation and in the cross conversation. Sairira is giving Jeffrey a real lesson about how she does the same kind of thing that you're talking about, Kelly. And I mean, their conversation is just going back and forth, and Jeffrey's quizzing her the way I'm quizzing you. I mean, it's like a parallel conversation going on. It's really cool.
As long as we can start the conversation, that's
right.
That's what we're here for.
That's right. And Jeffrey's saying, thanks, Kelly, and thank you for going back to that question, Walt. Saira became my guide for a minute. Yeah, she did. That's great. Fabulous. So I don't really see... Oh, wait, a question. Do you ever think of making choices as a series of ones and zeros? That's a question for me. Yes and no.
Definitely for you.
Actually, I don't, Jeffrey, believe it or not. I guess in one sense that I do, in that I often will try to connect to my inner Walt and just try to get a yes or a no in an emotional way. So in that sense, I do. But in general, no, I don't really think about ones and zeros. I don't think about yeses and nos. I mean, I think about it when I have to write a computer program script, but that's about it. Because you have to. Otherwise, you can't make sense out of the programming. But no, I think that would be actually confusing to try to think about, real world stuff that way all the time, breaking it down to ones and zeros. It kind of makes me think of Alan Turing, who was one of the original developers of what we now know of as the computer. He lived in the time of World War II, and he was one of the members of the group at Bletchley Park that decrypted and broke the code that the Nazis were using, or the codes, I should say, that the Nazis were using to communicate via radio, via wireless, to their troops in the field. And that was a big breakthrough, obviously, because once they could break those codes, they knew what they were going to be doing, and they would be able to create strategies to counter them. But Turing was a very left-brain thinker. He was beautifully portrayed. I mean, the story itself wasn't terribly accurate to what happened, but the movie The Imitation Game did a brilliant job. Benedict Cumberbatch played Turing, and he did a brilliant job of portraying the mindset of Alan Turing. And it's a very literal mindset. That's the way Benedict played the role. So, there are a number of different times where the character is interacting with other characters, and he is literally answering every question literally. And they're asking questions idiomatically and figuratively. And so there's a big disconnect that always goes on, because he's always answering the literal question, and they think that he's giving them a hard time. And he's sitting there saying, why are they giving me a hard time asking these questions? Because the mindsets are so completely different. So if you want to get an idea of what that really, really left-brain mindset is, watch The Imitation Game and watch Benedict Cumberbatch's portrayal of Alan Turing. It gives you a really good picture of it. But I don't know what made me think of that. Let's see, we got about 7 minutes left. That was the last question that Jeffrey had, and I hope I answered that one. I think I did. Do we have any more questions we can invent among ourselves to talk about? This has been a pretty good one, pretty good conversation, because we've really kind of reached, we definitely surpassed what Steve and I talked about this morning, so we cleared the hurdle.
I like being on the most spontaneous show, so I'm going to keep my record.
All right, so I'm going to put the pressure on you. What's the next question for us to address? What's the next
geez.
thought?
Let me think.
Should I play the Jeopardy theme?
I don't know. I don't have a question.
Okay. Well, maybe all the questions have been answered. Maybe there aren't any more questions. Kelly, you got anything for us?
Not really.
Huh? All right. Well, let me see if I can just... I'll tap into that inner Walt, the one that I'm not sure if it's my logical mind or my inner Walt, and I'll see what comes out. So, let's see.
Maybe it's just your inner Walt is logical.
I can't rule that part out. I can't rule that part out at all. Okay. Well, here's what I often do when I don't have a question. I'll start asking the question anyway. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do that right now. All right. So, well, what do you think about this? We are people who are constantly learning to be deliberate creators. And in the role of deliberate creators, we run into our own blocks periodically about how to, get better at the task. And it's different for every person. Everybody has their own little things they're wrestling with. And yet, despite that fact, we're always trying to come up with generalized rules for how to overcome that. Is there a better way to do that? And until I said that question, I didn't know what the question was going to be, but that's the question.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. There
it is. And that actually can answer your question, too.
Okay, cool. While you answer it, I'll try to think about what the question was.
But I was going to say, I've recently learned from you, actually, Walt, that little things that you do can help you unblock what you're trying to manifest. Like the other day when I was getting my steroid shot in my back, and I was like prepared for the pain. So I was like gripping my hands like this, and I was like, okay, this is not going to hurt. And I was like, no. Walt would say, don't use the word hurt.
That's right.
So I had to re-rack my brain. Okay, let's think of another word. This isn't going to be painful. And I was like, no, painful's still a bad word. So then I came up with, this is going to be painless. And as I kept saying in my mind over and over again, this is going to be painless. They gave me the shot. I didn't feel a thing.
I love it.
So little things like that, can get you through.
That's literally mind over matter right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you were experiencing actual matter, and it didn't matter. You didn't even notice it.
Yeah, I did notice it.
Yeah, that's pretty
mean,
cool.
The lidocaine helped, but but I didn't feel them put the lidocaine in either. That was the other thing.
So
it all worked out in the end.
You have anything to add to that, Kelly? What do you think?
I kind of forgot what the question was. Sorry.
Well, I can't really blame you because the question was so meandering. I was really amazed that Alyx was able to come up with an answer for it, to be perfectly honest.
I'm good like that.
And actually, I can tell you that was a question that really did come from my inner being. And the way I know it is, it completely bypassed my logical mind. I had no time to think about it at all. So it had to be from my inner being.
No, I agree with that, by the way. I think it was.
And I think the gist of the question is, every person has their own blocks, and everybody has their own way of understanding stuff. So instead of trying to apply a one-size-fits-all solution, how do you go about applying a solution either in your case or for a client's case? How do you actually deal with the fact that everybody has blocks in different ways?
Well, I really believe that we're here in this lifetime and we get given different lessons, we get given different blocks, exactly what you've said. And our job is to try and, become the best version of ourselves that we can be. So it has to be very individual and very unique to the individual. But ideally, we have all the answers inside ourselves, right? So actually, you can get help, you can get external help, you can get a spiritual teacher, you can get Reiki healers, you can get all of these amazing things that definitely do help. But ultimately, the biggest lesson that I learned last year was that no one has the answers. No one knows what my purpose is apart from me. And I think that the only thing that can help you to connect in with what your truth is and what you're here to do and what's going to light you up is really being able to connect with your higher self, be able to meditate and work those answers out yourself. And you can get help doing that, but ultimately that's the only thing that's going to unblock you is you.
Okay, well then I got my work cut out for me because I've got to start developing that skill even more. I mean, you just said it very carefully, very clearly. I got to do more meditating. So. Okay, I know what my homework is. Hey, this has been great. Thank you very much for having the conversation, ladies. And thank you also to our live stream audience for your questions and commentary and so forth. I love the fact that we have parallel conversations going on. It just kind of makes me feel like this is like burgeoning and, getting larger and larger and larger. So thank you, everybody. And we hope that you'll join us all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.